I asked the unions to take significant cuts over a 2-year period. When I say significant, basically a 10% cut over a 2-year period, and I indicated if we were able to do that, we would not have to lay off individuals. Unions came back and said, we don't believe that we can take those cuts. As a result, I laid off 180 people. I laid off 180 people, sadly, within a day or two after the unions coming back. So what happened then was everyone saw very, very dramatically that this was not something where we had a drawer full of money, or this was going to be something that was going to dissipate away over a short period of time, that these are major, difficult economic issues that we have to begin to resolve. This past fiscal year, when I went back to the unions, I listed about a half a dozen other ways that we could cut costs. Again, rolling back salaries, all designed to keep people working, because I didn't think it made a lot of sense to take a career city employee, have them either be an itinerant employee or a cyclical employee, or being in a situation where they were put at risk from the standpoint of their own financial well-being, their personal financial well-being. Many are family people, many have kids, they've got houses, and this economic time, you're not exactly going to be able to bounce back and get a job in another, in another sector. So I went out once again to the unions and indicated, look, what we'll do is shared collective sacrifice. Let's see if we're able to work some things out here. With different unions, I was able to work out different understandings. But the fact of the matter is, in particular, a certain union came back and said, well, we'd rather not do anything. Let's maintain the status quo and see exactly what happens next. What happened at that point was the alternative was to lay off an additional approximately 70 people or come up with a creative solution to the problem. What I decided to do was institute a furlough system. And the furlough system is 4 hours a week for approximately 400 people, which saves about 70 jobs. And the union, which I thought was very interesting, went to court arguing that I didn't have the authority to furlough the individuals. Rather, what their preference was that I lay off an additional 70 people. Now, this was a union that had lost about 100 people in February. So my position is under the management's rights clause in this particular contract, I did have the ability to furlough people, and it was in their best interest to maintain their jobs, and also in the city's best interest to maintain services. That it was an obligation to our city, the taxpayers, the residents, that we continue to have a employment pool that is large enough to serve a city of New Bedford, which is 100,000 people.
There are a number of challenges especially for a politician, in trying to deal with a budget crisis in a very small window. When we're given months or weeks or sometimes days to deal with a significant cut in the state budget, there are decisions that we're going to have to make that are going to be unpopular. So, in the city of Fitchburg, for example, I talked about there being a $6.5 million budget deficit, $4 million cut from local aid, $1 million less in receiving local receipts, and then $1.5 million increase that's needed just to maintain level services. So $6.5 million, two terms, that's $13 million. So I've been able to save the city $13 million because I have to, because we have to have a balanced budget. Now, that's a significant amount of money. That's a number of probably services that people don't realize that we deliver that have faced a significant impact. And we've been able to address the majority of it through renegotiating healthcare, renegotiating contracts, putting in an energy savings program, which has saved us a lot of money, and a lot of great things, a lot of collaborations that have saved us money. But what everybody notices is even if you save the city $13 million over 2 years, they notice the $20,000 that you don't save, or they notice the $200,000 that you don't save. So we always focus on what is the reduced services. And Fitchburg has really had to do two significant things. One is to reduce the number of hours in the library. So the library used to be open 7 days a week. Now it's open 3. And we're working on a multi-year plan to provide the funding to bring that library back. The second thing that was impacted in the city of Fitchburg is the street lights. The streetlight bill for the city is about $500,000. So we shut off about 60% of the streetlights, saving the city about $300,000 a year. That has been a firestorm, and in a good and a bad way. It's been probably one of the most visible cuts that we see. Because sometimes if you close a fire station, nobody really realizes that until they actually need that service. If you take a few police cars off the street, they might not notice that. They'll certainly notice if you stop plowing. And actually, decades ago, there was a mayor who actually stopped plowing the snow in the winter. So that's what people remember in terms of tight budget times. So the streetlight issue, that's extremely visible because everybody can see that. But one of the reasons why I chose the streetlights is, first of all, it is visible. The citizens really do need to know the significant impact of the economic crisis on towns, and we really need to figure out how to do things differently. And the second reason why I did it is because that is actually the one thing that each and every citizen can participate in. So if I close a fire station and shut down an engine, it might cost about $700,000 a year to bring that engine back. That's virtually impossible for citizens to come together and say, how do we all chip in and get that fire engine back and running? If a police officer is off the street, and then you need 4 to just keep the 4-day cycle going, and then you need another person in case there's something that's off. So each patrol segment of a day is about $250,000. Again, not something that the public can say, hey, let's chip in $5 a piece and bring back these patrol cars. If I don't fill potholes, you're not going to see citizens go out in the street and try and fill potholes, and so on and so forth. But a citizen can decide to turn on a streetlight and do it themselves for $7 a month.
We've had some very difficult times. I mean, the unions actually have worked pretty well with us. When we got the 9C cuts back in January of 2009, we sat down with the unions and began negotiating with them on a furlough to avoid layoffs. It took a lot of work, more work than really it seemed was necessary, but we were successful in reaching that. That allowed us to avoid any layoffs during that fiscal year, allowed us to close that budget gap. We then moved forward in May of 2009 with approximately 50 layoffs. That was very challenging. Again, I think we were successful in being able to do it as painlessly as possible, certainly from the organization standpoint, but certainly it was painful for the people who were being laid off. Those have been certainly the most challenging. It's required us to put a lot of effort, a lot of work. Of course, that's what we're there for in terms of coming up with strategies to make reductions without really affecting services. It's certainly in the 30 years I've been in the business, it's been certainly the toughest period to go through. I think that what we've learned from it is that we have to work together to try to come up with these solutions. But we really need the support from the state. We need the support of the people to understand the difficult times that we're going through. And we're no longer we should never have been, but we're certainly no longer in a position where we can, continue to provide services at the same level without additional revenues or without, making changes in the way we do business.